Let me first start by saying I'm on the West Coast, so I say good early afternoon, but I say to all of you who are either on the East Coast or in different time zones, or even potentially even in different countries, good late afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining Gina and I. By way of introduction, my name is Kay Foster, and I've been a Spelman trustee going on 7 years. I had the honor and privilege of serving on the Presidential Search Committee for the last search that brought us President Campbell. And with Gina, I'm just delighted again and privileged and honored to be co-chairs for this current Presidential Search Committee, which will bring us our 11th president. So before we jump in, I will tee over to my sister for her to introduce herself.
Thank you, Kay, and welcome again to everyone. As Kay mentioned, my name is Gina Ash. I am fortunate to be the co-chair of the Presidential Search Committee. I am a proud member of the class of 1983 of Spelman, and have been a member of the Board of Trustees since 2014. Time flies when you're having fun. So I've been at this for a while. While I was not on the last Presidential Search Committee, of course, I was on the board that selected Dr. Campbell as its 10th president. So just really delighted to be with you and looking forward to getting your input and getting all you can offer to help us make this a success. So welcome, and with that, Kay, you can kick it off.
Thank you. Thank you, Gina. As Gina said, we are, thank you so much. I have a little scratchy throat. We are delighted that you're going to spend some time with us today. What we intend to do today is to share with you the progress of the committee's work to date. We will also, as you may have noticed, when we sent out the invitation, we asked for questions in advance. You will also hear us refer to the fact that we have been posting the frequently asked questions to date. And if there are additional questions that come up in this session that are not currently on the frequently asked questions on the website, we'll be sure to add those as well. As you know, we have committed to having the many stakeholders and constituents that are critical to this process having an opportunity to engage with us. And today is another one of the ways in which we are committing to engaging. One of the things you will hear from Gina and I today is, on the front end, I will take you through how we have structured the search, the various phases, what happens in each phase, where are we today. Gina will then take you through the work that we have done in advance of starting to collect candidates and nominations. We obviously had to put together a leadership profile that will allow us then to invite people both to participate in the process, but also to seek nominations from others and to seek advice from others. So Gina will take you through what we have heard today, how that is structured, and then I'll come back at the end and tell you, here's where we are, here's what's happening next, and we'll answer your questions or your comments both as we go along, but we'll also, before we close, we will just check to see whether you have any outstanding questions or comments. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right in. Terry, can I have the first slide? As I mentioned, we structured the search timeline in a series of phases. And we kicked off back in July, and I'm going to go back and forth between this and the next page, because this slide lays out the timeline. I'll walk you through that. And then the next slide tells you what happens in each phase. So we started this work, as you know, back in July, and that was where we assembled the search committee. We went through an RFP process and identified our search partner, which, as you know, is Storbeck Search. They are a nationally known firm. They do quite a bit of their work, at least the team that is working with us has deep specialty in the work of identifying and placing presidents of colleges. Quite a large number of those are women's and liberal arts colleges, so very much in our sweet spot. And we also have a member of the team who is physically in Atlanta, because we thought that was an important, certainly important for that person to be in, not just physically in Atlanta, but to understand the context of Atlanta. We completed that first phase with, as I said, assembling the search committee, the RFP for getting a search partner, and then starting to collect through a series of whether there were listening sessions, the survey, collecting input that people provided to us through written in comments, whether people sent us notices or notes, but bringing all of that information together to help frame what we would say was the leadership expectations or profile of the next college president for Spelman. We are just about finishing up the second phase, phase 2, and that has us really now starting to build the pool, a diverse and inclusive pool. Phase 3 kicks off, or we're in the process of kicking off phase 3, which will come to closure in about the January, we anticipate in the January timeframe. And between January and April is when we anticipate we will be down selecting, interviewing, and ultimately choosing a candidate or candidates that we will recommend to the full board for the board to select the final candidate. Thank you, Terry. So as I indicated, the first phase began in July. We went from July to October planning and organizing the search, which is, as I said, assembling the committee, putting together a search partner, and then starting to build the profile that really helps us manage the search effectively. Phase 2, which we are just bringing to a close now, is really about building that strong, diverse, and inclusive pool. Phase 3 has us really starting now to evaluate and screen that very large candidate list. And as I mentioned in phase 4, we start to interview those candidates and ultimately prepare a recommendation that goes to the board for the board's deliberation and ultimate selection of the 11th president of the college. And in phase 5 is really what we call the launching of that president and the successful onboarding of that president. I'll draw your attention to the note that we have at the bottom, because in addition to the work that this committee is doing around identifying the next president of the college, we are also at the same time, we have another committee that is working on the presidential transition process. And clearly you would anticipate that we would want to have some form of recognition and farewell events for Dr. Campbell. And then really with the same level of diligence, planning the onboarding process for the incoming president. So those are the phases. As I said, we kicked off in July. We've completed that phase, which had us, as I said, selecting the search firm, bringing our committee members together, putting a timeline in place. Phase 2, which is where we are today, and we're bringing that to a close, completing listening sessions. We've had the survey out. We've had very strong response to the survey. We have completed a number of what we would call informational interviews with key constituents across the board. And then we brought all of that information together to develop the leadership profile and an evaluation rubric. Right now, with the search partner, we are in the process of both doing research on the prospects and collecting nominations. Let me at this point just remind you that in the event you have nominations that you wish to provide, please feel free to continue to do that. I'll ask Terry to drop in the chat the link that you can use to do so. But please know that we are continuing to accept nominations, either that you have individuals that you think we should consider, or maybe you yourself want to be considered for the role. Thank you, Terry. So just to give you a sense, please, Terry.
I just wanted to say that the chat function isn't working in our webinar, but they can use the same email address, presidentialsearch@spelman.edu.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you very much. So just to give you a sense, and again, we are, every day these numbers change, but just to give you a sense directionally of where we are, we've had over 1,100 stakeholder contributors today who have participated either through the survey, through the listening sessions, through interviews, and more than 50% of those have identified as alums and 30% of those as students. So to date, we have about 150 nominations that we have received, and we have about 69 prospects. So we are well on the way with the search. And I'm going to tee over to Gina to take us now to the next level, but wanted to just give you a sense of how the search has unfolded, where we are, and then I'll come back at the end and tell you what's in front of us. So Gina, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kay. And as you have gathered from listening to Kay, we've been just a tad busy with moving this presidential search along. There have been no dull moments, put it that way. But the work, of course, has not been in vain. And as Kay mentioned, we have talked to so many of our constituents and stakeholders, our alumni, our students, our faculty, friends of the college. And based upon that input, we have started to put together a profile, as Kay mentioned, that will help us in selecting the right next 11th president of the college. So Terry, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So some of the themes that have emerged from these listening sessions are on the screen in front of you. At the top of the list, you won't be surprised to know that everyone felt that it was important for the next president to maintain Spelman's place as the #1 HBCU in the country. Having been in that spot for 15 years, we are not interested in giving it up anytime soon. So we want that person to remain focused on that. Clearly enhancing our fundraising efforts, and specifically doing so to help support student affordability and faculty and staff excellence. It is no secret that the cost of college is going up exponentially and is hitting our students harder than ever. So one of our top priorities is to make sure the next president is focused on fundraising to help offset student affordability, if you will. Building on our history and our history of fiscal strength in particular. We have been fortunate in that we have had some great financial experts leading us and financial advisors leading us, and we want the next president to be able to maintain that positioning as well. My favorite bullet, increase and improve student housing. This has been a year for the ages in that regard. I think many people are aware that a typical freshman class for Spelman is roughly around 500 or a little over 500 students. And this year, because of so many factors, including the great reputation that Spelman continues to garner, we found ourselves with almost 800 freshmen this year, which of course exacerbated the housing situation. But it also highlighted the need to make sure we're focused on that. And then last on this slide, another theme that has emerged is making sure we're investing in the infrastructure of the school, including our technology, making sure our students and faculty have access to the latest and greatest technology so they too can remain competitive in their respective endeavors. Next slide, please. Other themes that emerged, and this is something that is special about Atlanta. For those of us who have spent time there, it is really important for the next president to be comfortable with being engaged with the local community. It's important for that person to be able to build cohesion around the Spelman identity and what it means to be a Spelman woman in 2021 and beyond. Importantly, it will be critical for this person to understand how to work collaboratively with and leverage the Spelman Alumni Network. There are many of us available, and we want to make sure that we are leveraged to help benefit the college. And then last, of course, but not least, is reimagining the relationships as they evolve with the changing dynamics, not only of the city, but just the change that we're going through as a country as well. So those were the themes that emerged from these sessions. And we use those to inform the next slide, which is what we captured as the description, if you will, of the next president of Spelman College. So we expect this person to appreciate and desire the need to preserve our rich legacy and resources, to be bold and courageous while leveraging our global footprint, and helping to focus on the needed strategic growth and impact of the college. This person needs to be very adept at working with multiple constituencies, particularly when those multiple constituencies have competing interests. The president will be a gifted communicator and an empathetic listener. It is so important to have a person in that office who understands why it's important to hear and listen to everyone's perspective to best inform decisions about the college. And this person needs to be ready to partner with all of our stakeholders. So we talked about faculty, we talked about staff, students and alumni, as well as the general public, all in the name of ensuring Spelman's future success. So what does that mean? We took all of those themes, all of that information, and came up with what is the following is the list of qualifications and characteristics that we expect to find in our next president. So hitting the highlights here. Understanding and being committed to the value of an HBCU. We understand that HBCUs are special in so many ways, and the person joining us in that role needs to understand and appreciate that. Being passionate about a women's liberal arts college and specifically Spelman's place as a top women's liberal arts college. Being an enthusiastic fundraiser. Respecting our legacy and long-held traditions, and we have lots of them, and we want that person to understand not only what they are, but why they're so important to us. Engaging with everyone to maintain the tight-knit community we have. Importantly, having a leader that can inspire a high-performing leadership team. No president can operate by themselves. They will need to have a leadership team that is able to help lift them and uplift them to the heights that we're expecting of them. Bringing a deep understanding of DEI and the diversity of identities that are actually held within a college of women of African descent. We're not all the same. And that person has to understand that within the cohort or group of women of African descent, we have diversity amongst us. Financial acumen. Again, this is another one of those. The person has to not only be an adept fundraiser, but also have the financial savvy to understand how to run an effective and efficient organization and how to lead an organization effectively. And that includes managing a complex organization like ours and dealing with large budgets and having large fundraising targets as well. The last bullet is also referencing the need to understand shared governance and how important that is, particularly to our faculty. Next slide, please. Bring experience with crisis management. And if we haven't learned anything over the past 5 years or so, it seems like each year brought with it a new crisis. And we were fortunate enough to have the leadership we had to be able to move smoothly from one crisis to the next. And that will be something that will be a continuing requirement. Having an entrepreneurial mindset, thinking out of the box, being innovative, understanding that what we are today is not what we're going to be tomorrow, and having the vision to lead us there. Demonstrating success with transformational leadership. Being a college president today is so very different from what it was 20 years ago even. And we need someone who is comfortable with what it means to be transformative in that role. Embracing student passions and activism. And we have taught our Spelman students to speak up for themselves and to represent themselves well everywhere, and on the campus is no different. And we want this president to be someone who understands how to embrace those passions and work with the students on those or their activism, as we call it. What else do I want to make sure I mention? Oh, experienced in advancing STEAM outcomes. We have done a great job of highlighting the arts and emphasizing the significance of our institution as a liberal arts institution, but also with focusing on producing top performers in the area of STEM and making sure we are staying on the forefront of that as we prepare our students to take on the world. Familiarity with urban and residential campuses. There is a special quality that goes with managing and leading a college that happens to be at the center of an urban city like Atlanta, and what it means to coexist with the community as it's developing and it's growing. And we take that responsibility very seriously. And the last bullet is one that to me is just non-negotiable, and that is being a transparent leader, an honorable leader, and a leader with unquestionable integrity. So with all the information we've gotten over the past several months, we have come up with the list that I've just reviewed with you as the qualities that we are expecting the 11th president to have. Next slide, please. And I think the next slide is yours, Kay.
Thank you, Gina. As hopefully you are able to see from, or at least to hear from Gina's taking you through those slides, we have really benefited, I think, from quite a diverse set of constituents who have offered their perspectives. And even though we have assembled that into 2 or 3 slides, I assure you that's not where we started. So I really want and hope that it is apparent to you how broad and how extensive we're really trying to be, and inclusive we're really trying to be in getting the voices of our stakeholders involved. Where we are now, as I mentioned, we're beginning phase 3, which has us reviewing the names that have been submitted and starting to contact potential candidates. We are, as I said to you, we're going to continue to receive nominations and to vet candidates. So please continue to submit nominations, or if there are any individuals that you want us to consider, please do so. One thing I want to remind you, I know we did ask you for questions in advance, but please, if you have questions, if you drop them into the Q&A before we close the call, Gina and I will be sure to answer those questions. As I said before, we are just starting phase 3. That will continue certainly through the end of the year. That will have us really now starting to say, what is the diverse pool that we are seeking from which to draw the candidates who ultimately then will make their way through the process. And as I indicated to you, because we are so early in the process, we will either select one finalist or more than one finalist. So much of that is really going to be dependent as we work our way through the process. What is the pool that we have available to us? Because at the end of the day, we want to ensure that the board has, we deliver to the board through a very rigorous and robust process, the best candidate or candidates for consideration for the next president of the college. Next, oh, we have a question, hold on. So, Gina, I'm gonna ask you to answer that question because it's, I wanna make sure that you bring your legal hat to that question, because that's a very important, thing for us to consider. And thank you for the questions. Go ahead.
So I see 2 questions. The first question is, do we have any serious alumni candidates in the pool? And I think we would be remiss if we didn't at least remind everyone that a significant part of this process is, of course, protecting people's confidentiality. So we are limited in what we can discuss in that regard. However, we can say that we have, as you saw on slide 3, we have quite a few nominees, quite a few prospects, and there are several alumni included in that as well. If you mean by serious, viable, I would say absolutely. Next question, and does Terry want to read them for us? Or do you want me to?
Will the next president be more long-term? Why did President Campbell decide to end her presidency? What significant challenges did she express to the board?
So Kay, would you like me to take that one as well?
Yeah, why don't you start, and then I'm happy to add anything to that. Yes.
Yeah. So if you've had a chance to read any of the literature that's been out there, what you will find is that when we found Mary and we found each other, Mary was in retirement, and we convinced Mary to come out of retirement because of the special quality that we knew she would bring to Spelman. And candidly, there was nothing that went wrong. She has done an extraordinary job. And when she came to us and announced that in her 7th year, it was time for her to step down, what we think is the peak of what she has done for the college, we respected that and understood why she wanted to do that. So this was not a case of anything going wrong. This was a case of our respecting her decision to step down at this point in her career. Kay, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, the only thing I would say is the one thing to remember, the average tenure of college presidents these days is 4.5 to 5 years. So we feel enormously blessed that coming out of retirement, President Campbell served for 6 years and served honorably and well. So yeah, no, and I don't think there were any significant challenges. Part of our work was really any search you do is more about the context, is what are the challenges that the next president is going to face, and that's not unique to Spelman. Yes, there are, and you saw that Gina went over those things, right? Access and affordability, ensuring that we have, that we continue to keep up with our scholarship. And quite frankly, then the broader context of the academy in which we have to continue to make progress with not just preparing our women academically, but preparing them to live in a world, in a context that's very different. I'm sure you'll agree with me, than even 6 years ago. So I don't think this is about the specific challenges that Mary faced, but what is the context in which the next president is going to be leading. So again, appreciate the question. You want to take the next one, Gina?
Will the next president be required to live on campus? Why or why not?
Now, this is an interesting one because I don't know that we've ever talked about this. I think the assumption has always been that they will. I don't know, Terry or Kay, even in the last search, was there ever any discussion about the president not living?
No, I don't. Certainly in the last search, we didn't even have a conversation about it because I think the assumption is that the president would live on campus. Terry, I don't know if your memory is different than mine.
I was not here.
Oh, that's right, I forgot. Terry, it feels like you've been here forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's funny. We have not had to address that. I think the expectation is that they will. I guess it would be interesting if someone had expressed or expresses a view or a preference not to, but we have not had to face that.
Correct.
This was a question also about the average tenure for higher ed presidents, 7 to 10 years. And I was trying to get a link to drop in that it has dropped from 8.5 to 6.5. And that was the data from 2016, I think was that study. And so it has changed, gone down even below the 6.5 as Kay mentioned. So I'm just going to go to the next question. And if I can find a link to that
okay, thank you.
Study, I will send it. Yeah. Are you committed to bringing more than one candidate for us to see to campus? In the past, when we have one person, it does not go over well.
So Gina, I'll give a perspective and then you'll offer. Let me first start by saying, let me put context around this. As you know, and as we've said repeatedly, part of what we have to do in this process is to protect the confidentiality of individuals who are applying for these positions. These individuals that we are seeking are individuals that are currently, many of them potentially in visible roles, are in roles where they're committed to their institutions. So let me just start by saying that remains at the top of everything we do, making sure that we absolutely protect the confidentiality of the individuals who are expressing interest and going beyond expressing their interest. You will recall that in my earlier comment, I indicated that it's so early in the process that we cannot say definitively there is going to be one candidate or multiple candidates. We would be remiss right now to make that as a definitive statement because that is not where we are in the process. We're committed to bringing to the board for their deliberation either the absolute best candidate or candidates. We are currently evaluating, and again, some of this is COVID. We don't know what's going to happen over the next couple of months, but we are evaluating whether or not we can, whether it's a candidate or more than one candidate, what does the process for engagement with that candidate or candidates, what is that process for engagement with various constituents across the campus? And again, we are so early in the process, I would be remiss if I made a definitive statement now, and you would not be happy with me because I might make a definitive statement that I couldn't honor. So I'm going to ask you to give us some grace in that we are so early in the process that it would be hard to answer that question other than the way I answered it. Gina, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Nope, I think you nailed it. I think we are in the process and we are proceeding in as transparent a way as we can. And we understand some of the comments and concerns in that regard, but I hope you understand we have to deal with what we deal with when we get there.
Okay, I have two questions. One is about fundraising. Spelman is in a crucial place where scholarships are important. And the question is, do candidates have fund and fundraising experience? Do most of the candidates have fund and fundraising experience? And then on a separate topic, many times the staff work very hard at Spelman. Can the next president be more open to staff feedback? The faculty many times have their issues addressed, but staff is often forgotten.
I'll take the first, you take the second.
Okay,
So here we go.
Got it.
First question, completely agree that Spelman is absolutely a place where scholarships are important. And you'll recall that when Gina described the profile and the characteristics, access and affordability were absolutely two things that we talked about. We also, and I know Gina mentioned this, that we have defined as a critical characteristic fundraising, and I like your talk of friend-raising experience, right? And we know that both of those things are critical. And again, you looked at the profile, there are a number of criteria across the profile. So we aren't going to pull out one thing like fundraising and say that is the most important or that's the only. The difficult job that we are managing as a committee is across all of those criteria. It's almost like the proverbial unicorn. Can you find a unicorn that actually addresses all of those things at a level of mastery? What we're really trying to do is, yes, this particular fundraising dimension is so important, and we're really trying to balance all of the criteria that Gina mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, Kay, and
Please.
Heather, I know what you're getting at. I mean, the reality is we've talked for many years about how Spelman has lost outstanding students to other colleges and universities that have had more resources in terms of scholarships. And we've also had issues with our students getting to their third and fourth year and not being able to finish because they can't afford to pay. And that is at the top of our list of things to address on both the front end and the back end. And thank you so much for asking that question. The other question, and Terry, I can't see it, but I think I remember that you were talking about the staff and whether or not the new president would be open to staff feedback. Absolutely. So one of the comments I talked about was we really need someone who understands how to work collaboratively with all of the constituencies. I talked about the multiple constituencies, even when those constituencies have competing interests. And when I talk about that, frankly, I'm thinking about staff, I'm thinking faculty, I'm thinking students, I'm thinking alums. You know, we're special, and the ability to be able to navigate all those different interests is terribly critical. And I know I talked a little bit about the fact that that person will need an outstanding leadership team. And by definition, they will necessarily have to be able to listen to the feedback they're getting from their team. So yes, and more yes to that question.
And that's actually sort of related to the next question, which is
Go ahead,
the goals
Terry.
you mentioned for the candidate are heavily focused on students and not the infrastructure of the administration. will this be weighted in more?
So let me just say my apology if I didn't give the items I mentioned the appropriate weight. It was not my intention to suggest that any one was more important than the other. I think, you know, we always keep our eyes on the students because they are why we're here, of course. But it is equally important to us that we are able to upgrade our infrastructure. You see some of the updates and changes we're making to the dorm rooms or the dorms. You see some of the technology changes we're making. We have our 25 and 25 campaign that has actually raised a little over $1 million to make sure Spelman is staying in the forefront of technology and infrastructure upgrades. And to be clear, we expect this person to progress from where we are. So we've done a great job and we need to take it to the next level. So absolutely focus on infrastructure, focus on administration, focus on academics, focus on students, focused on alumni relationships. This person, it's a tall order. It's a tall order. And, you know, I mentioned that, you know, it's a lot more difficult to be president of a college today anywhere, but in particular for Spelman, because there are just so many aspects of leadership that this person has to be adept in. So thanks for the question. And absolutely, those things will be important and high on the list as well.
I'm very happy to report that the next two are comments, thanking both Kay and Gina for your hard work. Our trustees work so hard, and it's nice that our alumni recognize this. So you have one, thank you for working hard to make this happen. We truly appreciate you in this historic time of Spelman. Kay and Gina, thank you so much for giving up your time to steward this important process.
Well,
And
thank you.
that's all I have open right now.
You are
Yeah,
so
let me
welcome.
just,
Yeah.
exactly. That's all I was going to say. I was going to echo Gina by saying you are so welcome. We both recognize that this is the single most important job that we have as trustees. And thank you. We appreciate your grace and consideration. Gina, over to you before we close.
And all I would say is, and we understand and appreciate how important it is to you as well. And we take our stewardship of this responsibility very seriously. Terry mentioned, or Kay mentioned, there's the website, there's an email address. If you have anything you want to share, if you have any recommendations, please share them. And we feel like together we can make this happen exactly how we expect it to. So thank you all, and to all a good night.
Have a blessed Thanksgiving holiday. It's right upon us. So thank you so much. Take good care and please be well.